More than 30 years later, Beetlejuice gets a revival sequel that feels like it was made just after the last one, in some good ways, but definitely some bad ways. I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. The IMDb synopsis for Beetlejuice reads, "After a family tragedy, 3 generations of the Dietz family return home to Winter River. Still haunted by Beetlejuice, Lydia's life is turned upside down when her teenage daughter Astrid accidentally opens the portal to the afterlife." Yeah, that's a pretty simplified explanation of the plot. It runs an hour and 45 minutes. The first 30 felt too long to me. The first movie is known for its visual gags and for discovering the nature of the afterlife and the spiritual world very early on. The couple played by, I'm going to forget their names, but Gina Davis and the Shadow, Alec Baldwin. I mean, they die very early on in that movie, and we are on the road of discovery with them as they're discovering the afterlife. There was almost immediately this sense of what is going on, what is this interesting world we are learning about, and it felt too long to get to the gags of the spiritual world in this movie, and the movie also didn't reveal many new facets of the afterlife. So 2 of the main components that were so interesting about the first one were lacking quite a bit as far as I'm concerned in this one. The movie in general also lacked the character focus that I want. Not even necessarily, it's a comedy, so I'm not expecting it to go really deep and character driven and stuff. I think it's just giving too much screen time. It's sharing screen time between too many characters. The first movie focused on the newly dead couple and Lydia, and they were the protagonists. Yes, you had her parents, you had her parents' occult friends or whatever, her artist friends and stuff, but they were just kind of side flavor characters. Beetlejuice was the villain, you had the 3 protagonists, and you had a few other characters that contributed to the problems that needed solving by the protagonists. So it was more focused in that regard. Here, Beetlejuice has Monica Bellucci's character, who I just feel like is wasted or just not developed and doesn't go anywhere interesting. But her character is tracking him down the whole movie, only to have that plot line build up to nothing and be unceremoniously and abruptly just kind of ended. Lydia has a boyfriend, Rory, who wants marriage but is clearly bad for her. Rory's scenes, I think, could have been trimmed way back to the point of him almost being absent from the movie, and the movie would have been fine. They would have had to rewrite some plot elements, I suppose, but it would have been pretty minimal. I don't think we really needed him for most of this movie, or maybe any of it with a little bit of rewriting. He was good for a few gag lines and bits, but was part of slowing down the movie and hurting my investment. Astrid, Lydia's daughter, has a young romance that blooms a bit, but that thread just feels unneeded. Sure, it does get her connected to the spiritual world, but she could just have been written to go visit a creepy bookstore, and some weird person or weird situation there gets us to roughly the same point where she needs help. Lydia's stepmom, Delia, still played wonderfully by Catherine O'Hara, also gets more time than she needs, I think, to flesh out gags of her life pursuits as an artist, and I didn't care about that stuff or really the gags that came along with it. The story is strongest when it is about the age-old struggle of mothers and daughters to have good relationships. And so I think Delia was an important facet of the story, but I think the script, if it would have given more time to that, to Delia and Lydia, and then Lydia and Astrid, and just the 3 generations of that struggle to find points of connection between mothers or stepmothers and daughters, I think I would have been a lot more invested in the outcome if they would have given more time to that. And I haven't even mentioned Willem Dafoe's supernatural police officer subplot. The story, arguably because of where it goes, needs a supernatural police force, but his character got entire scenes of his own that only took away from my experience and slowed down the proceedings, As it was, there were just too many unneeded plot elements and characters, too many scenes that I wanted snipped out, and a slow time at the beginning getting to the visual gags that are a major selling point of this franchise. And even when the gags got going, they didn't feel as surprising conceptually as I'd hoped. If you've seen the trailer, there's the spill your guts gag, and I think that was the best one in the movie. And already, you can watch that for free. A number of others, I'm not going to say all others or anything hyperbolic like that, but a number of others felt like redos of old gags, including a lip sync song number that went on way too long for me. Good jokes, I think, are funny in part. They get the reaction of laughter from us, at least in part, because they take us off guard. The punchline is unexpected. That's why we laugh. Not because we know the punchline before it happens. It's because something about it, or a comedic actor's behavior, something takes us off guard. It surprises us in some way and delivers something that we don't expect. But way too many gags in Beetlejuice felt somehow too familiar. Despite having years between the original movie and this one, it feels like a hastily written script to me, like those in franchises that are just quickly churning out sequels. It does not feel like a script with a vision that would make it worth returning to this property after all these years. Now, as far as the cast goes, I have no complaints, I don't think, about the performances, only the material that they were using. Michael Keaton in particular brings back Beetlejuice like he made the first movie yesterday, and the heavy makeup helps him get away with looking like no time has passed. So, I mean, there's some great performance elements there. Some really good stuff. No complaints, I don't think, about any of the performances. As far as the visuals go, once the visual gags finally really got going, they felt very much like a continuation of the first movie's design, to the point of mimicking stop-motion animation for one creature. And that felt fine, and even felt kind of appropriate to me. Like maybe that's just some weird facet of this world that things move and look that way or whatever. It's kind of cartoony anyway, the gags and all that kind of stuff. It has a kind of a classic Warner Brothers vibe in some ways. The setting in the world, I think, should feel the same. Those kind of like surrounding elements. Let the gags themselves be the fresh element. So really, no complaints about the visuals in that regard, and the practical costumes and humorously gory effects of walking corpses were certainly appreciated for not going digital, for remaining practical. So I mean, yeah, I was really pretty happy with the visual execution in general. Okay, as far as themes, is there anything of moral, philosophical, or spiritual significance in the themes of this thing that could trigger some worthwhile thought or conversation? Well, buried and blended in with what I think are unnecessary elements is a theme of broken relationships between mothers and daughters, as I said before. Maybe even specifically how grief or preoccupation with career can keep us from investing in family and relationships. I think we probably see that in both Delia and Lydia. And it's a good theme. It's just so lightly touched on, I doubt it will spark much thought or conversation. Now, of course, with Beetlejuice, the concept of death and the afterlife is front and center. However, it's treated with such absurd, fantastical whimsy, and I wouldn't want it to be treated differently, but because it's treated that way, it feels like a complete avoidance, really, of the topics in any kind of meaningful way of addressing them, as morbid humor can sometimes be. Now, I wouldn't say that morbid humor is bad or harmful as a rule, but if we continually deflect thoughts of mortality and the afterlife with humor, we're setting ourselves up actually to live foolishly. Ecclesiastes chapter 7 verses 2 through 4 in the ESV says, "It is better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting. For this is the end of all mankind, and the living will lay it to heart. Sorrow is better than laughter, for by sadness of face the heart is made glad." And how that happens is such an interesting thing to ponder and consider. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of mirth. So some really valuable principles there. We're about a month away from even the start of October, when horror fiction becomes more relevant, typically in entertainment. But a year or so ago, I started a personal tradition in the month of October to, yes, watch horror movies, but then also to sit through the credits of each one afterward and ponder death as I think God would want me to the best of my ability. It made horror movies no less fun or engaging, but it also gave me some worthwhile time of reflection. So that's an idea that you're welcome to utilize if you think it might be useful to you. All right, no idea what your tastes are in movies, but if I were a time traveler, I'd go back in time and say, Vader. Skip this one. Although you enjoyed the original, it's not like you're some big fan of Beetlejuice. And this movie will only add a stain to your thoughts of the first one. It's rated PG-13 for violent content, macabre and bloody images, strong language, some suggestive material, and brief drug use. And those are all of my thoughts for now on Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. Right now I'd like to take some time to add a tune for pre-made rhyme. The lyrics kind of never change, but the melody gets rearranged. I never know what I'll create to say how much I appreciate Dan Axel, Gabriel Stinson, Olin D. Branham, Winston Crutchfield, Lee Bray, Justin D. Myers, Joel Nelson, Jake Berry, and Michael Cottrell. Thank you for supporting me and SBP and CGC. Now to all who hear this tune, thank you as well. Please come back soon. Wanna hear your name in song? Then check out our page on Patreon. All right, I would love, as always, to get your thoughts and reactions in the comments below. Please like, share, subscribe, click that bell to stay connected. I want to thank the Spirit Blade Insiders for making this review possible. You can get info about the benefits of joining over at patreon.com/Spirit Blade Productions, and I hope you'll also check out our podcast and stay connected to all CGC content over at christiangeekcentral.com as we continue to geek out and seek the truth. For more chat about geek entertainment, answers to your questions, and news from the wider world of Christian geekery, get the Christian Geek Central podcast today on iTunes and other podcast services.